wake up and then do it, then you're too tired to even question it. So you're just like, yeah, this is what we do.
You're like, I'm moving, I'm doing this, my shoes are by the door. Here we go. Yeah. Cool. So I figured out how to record, which is awesome. So it should be recording, which is great. This talk kind of like piggybacks a little bit off of last week where we talked about like comparison and Strava and social media and like all of those really fun things that we like love to hate. So kind of like figuring out how to trust the process when your results lag, or when adaptations aren't happening as quickly as you want them to, or as quickly as you think they should. So it's just like kind of like a hive mind conversation about that. But I do have kind of like some research to bring to the table as well. So, first thing I want us to do is like just try to imagine being like a little kid, like maybe 4 or 5, and you're sitting in a room and someone walks in and they place one marshmallow on a plate in front of you and explains that the deal, right? Like you can eat this marshmallow right now, or you can wait 15 minutes by yourself in a room and you'll get 2 marshmallows. So this person leaves the room and the clock starts. Okay. So obviously there's temptation to eat the marshmallow. What do you do?
Eat the marshmallow.
Eat the marshmallow.
Okay.
The only right answer.
Anyone else?
I definitely would not have, and I know because I have experience with something like this.
You did not eat the marshmallow, Christina?
It was a packet of M&Ms, but I did not do it, and then I got scolded for not participating in the it was a slightly different premise, but it was about drugs. So we were all given a thing of M&Ms, and we were supposed to open it and eat one, and put it back, and I didn't open it because I knew I couldn't just eat one. So the next day they're like, "How many of you ate more?" as like an addiction thing, and I was like, "I didn't open it." And they're like, "Well, you didn't follow directions." I was like, "I know, but I can't just eat one."
That's self-awareness.
That's
May have been
brilliant.
more self-aware back then than I am now.
So if I gave you a marshmallow right now in my kitchen and was like, "I'll be back," would you
And
eat
it
the
was, and you
marshmallow?
didn't say you could eat it.
If I said you can eat this, or when I come back, I'll give you 2.
Oh, I'd wait for two. Yeah.
Okay. Caitlin, what would you do?
I would not eat it, but also I know this. I took AP psychology and I heard about this
Okay.
in that class. So
So
I
you know
wasn't
the
going to
drill.
say anything. Yeah.
Chris and Andrew, would you guys eat the marshmallow?
I would wait.
Okay.
You're offering me more. I mean, marshmallow's not a great example. I don't love marshmallows, but if you were like, here's a peanut butter cup, or I'll
Yep.
give you two, like I would rather have the two peanut butter cups.
So, okay, dark chocolate Trader Joe's peanut butter cup.
I'm 100% waiting for two.
Okay, so this is called the Stanford marshmallow test, this like whole premise here. So it was initially created in the 1960s, early 70s by a guy named Walter Mischel. And like basically the early results suggested that kids who waited longer for the second treat actually grew into adults with better outcomes, meaning they had higher SAT scores, stronger overall health, more stable relationships, etc. But there's obviously
Eggs.
layers to it too. So if you said you would eat the marshmallow right away, it's okay. You're in good company. Um, so I don't know, like they've replicated this study over the years and they've just like they keep finding more profound results. So later studies, I think one of the later studies that was done in 2020 2018 had 900 children from all sorts of backgrounds and they found the link between waiting and like waiting for the second marshmallow and later success actually weaken significantly when you account for the family environment. So there's like the early cognitive skills, socioeconomic factors, home stability, whatever. And the predictive power actually drops sometimes by like 2/3 or more. Last not last year, in 2024, there was a follow-up study on adults who had done the test as kids, like 4 or 5 years old, And it showed that it didn't really reliably forecast broad life functioning like achievement or health or behavior when background variables were more controlled. So basically what this test showed was that like the ability to trust or not, right? So like kids from reliable environments where promises were kept were way more likely to wait for the second marshmallow. In more unstable situations, the kids who had grabbed the first, like the marshmallow, wasn't necessarily like an impulsive act. It was just a rational response to their past experiences. So the guy who started this test in the 60s emphasized like how important it is to build trust first. And in some versions of like the replicated study, kids would ring a bell to bring the experimenter like back in. And like if they rang the bell and the experimenter came in when they would wait longer. But if the experimenter didn't come in when they said they would eat the marshmallow. So there was like an element of trust in being like, is this person coming back or not? Right? So without that kind of like reliability in the other person, there was like the delayed gratification kind of like lost its edge. The kids weren't excited about the second marshmallow. They just wanted someone in there with them. So again, like trusting the process when results lag. So I think this is really applicable to running, especially trail running. Especially as we're like in a quote unquote like down season where it's like colder, you're not doing as many like big epic workouts. Or some people don't even have races on the schedule yet. And so it's kind of like they go through the motions and they're like, what are we doing? What's the point here? So we're gonna talk a little bit about that and just kind of like unpack the growth mindsets versus scarcity mindset. Does anyone have any questions or want to give reasons for why they would eat the marshmallow sooner? I know Jacob went off screen. I think he's mad.
My brother would eat the marshmallow,
I
so
have
I have to eat it faster.
I have one thing that's funny too. Sorry, Jacob.
Oh, I'm just saying I'm an instant gratification kind of person.
Yeah, and then the only other thing I'm thinking about it and questioning because I've actually reportedly not had high trust, so it's interesting that I would wait. But I think for me, it comes more so from a factor of like control, whereas like I like to exhibit self-control. And like Christina, like you were saying earlier, it's like, it's more so I'm a rules follower.
Yeah, I
And
feel like
like
that's like that too.
if I'm being told that I need to wait, then I'm gonna wait and like try to control that and like more. So for me, it's more so control than trust, but I still think that comes into your point of training. Whereas, again, just like control and trust can kind of, it's more so about being like diligent and you trust the training. You just know that like this is what I need to do. Maybe more so type A, is what I'm thinking, at least from my standpoint of why I want to eat it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel the same. Big rules follower.
Big rules follower.
Mhm.
Andrew, were you going to say something?
I think that like I can understand the lack of trust in the absence of like a sibling that's gonna come in and steal the candy from me, which was not something that I had to deal with. I think it's like, Kristen, to your point, like if they don't show up, I'm going to grant some grace for like, a couple of minutes or whatever, but like how I react in these situations is like you get a grace period and then it's like, all right, all bets are off.
Mhm.
Um, which I think is at this point my response to a society that I think is like slowly losing trust in certain places where I'm just like, all right, like I have to react that way, not because I don't trust people, but because it feels like there are times where the trust is not returned or like not honored, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of that is like trust is not necessarily like a willpower thing. It's more of like a learned experience thing where like if you had a lot of experience where your sibling is stealing the marshmallow and you have to get it or you don't get it at all, like obviously you eat the marshmallow. Um, but then when you have like the trust factor in terms of like society or a team or like work or friendships or whatever, it's like what you experience consistently is what you can expect to kind of like get back out of something. So I think that's a really good point. Which kind of shifts into like the growth and scarcity mindset, which is like obviously we talk about this a lot, but it's like the growth mindset is like asking questions about like what can I learn? How do I adjust? And focusing more on mastery versus a scarcity mindset being like instant gratification. I need this right now. There's only 8 slices of pie and I want them all type of thing. Um, but the growth mindset kind of like helps us develop through like more dedication and strategy and input and like help from others. And failure doesn't become something to be afraid of. It just becomes like information, right? So you can figure out how to master the basics or how to master a certain thing to get better at something bigger. So there's a woman named Carol Dweck who kind of put this whole thing together in the 70s and 80s and showed basically what the marshmallow test indicated too is like mastery oriented kids were able to like persist in the face of setbacks and quote unquote failure while other kids who I don't know like weren't as curious about how to master something like felt more helpless and would just like give up. So if they like messed up one time, it was just game over, right? Versus the growth mindset kids who would just like keep trying again to figure out how to get it right the second time. So anyway, there's a lot of like brain imagery that's really interesting, where they have like all of these scans where like brains are firing and there's more neural activity when like kids with growth mindsets are actually reviewing mistakes. And there have been like really cool interventions that like teach growth mindset. But in terms of running, um, since we are in a new year, obviously, and everyone's talking about, I don't know if everyone's talking about resolutions or if it's just like the expectation is that everyone's talking about resolutions, but everyone shows up on like January 1st and there's just like kind of like a pull to like have a goal or do a thing or be someone new for the next year, which I hate personally. Like I hate. Um like I'm all for goals and all of those things, but I think that you can like make those changes at any point throughout the year if you are actually wanting to make those changes, you just do it. But I kind of wanted to like bring it back to running. And one example of that was like Eliud Kipchoge always talks about like in all of his interviews talks about like trusting the process and his philosophy is that I think I wrote it down. It's only the disciplined ones in life are free is what he says. And so he kind of like trusts his long runs to strengthen his mind and his body and kind of like respects the pain. But he also trusts himself, he trusts his training, and he says that like preparation trumps outcome every time. And that if you plan well and you execute simply, eating, running, sleeping, getting everything that he knows he needs to do done, turning over all of those stones, like it might not always be flashy, but it's foundational to what he's trying to do in the long term. So, in terms of like breaking a 2-hour marathon, like I think he's gonna get there. But it's just like those things are built on like years of unseen and seen monotony, like really inglorious, boring running, right?
And a nice dose of good genes.
What?
And a nice dose of good genes.
That
In his case.
definitely helps.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely helps. So I think like we can open this up too, because like in terms of like what you guys are training for, um, and Jacob's comment about like instant gratification type of guy, I am super interested. How do you guys normally handle like the Strava graph or the comparison trap, or like when you see another person doing a similar workout or running similar mileage than you, like how do you normally respond in those moments?
Don't look at Chris's Strava.
block Chris on all forms of media.
Get kudos and keep it rolling.
I don't know. Logan, Brett, and I all do a lot of the same things, and we continuously seem to beat each other at things, and I think it's kind of cool.
hmm
Or Brett just beats us.
Brett just beats us.
Yeah. I don't know. I gotta like take on full, uh, like everything that's going on in my life versus what other people is going on in other people's lives and commitments and all that. It's not, it's not really ever apples to apples, you know.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
Yeah.
That's what I try to remember. I was just talking to a friend about, a couple of years ago being able to train and just the difference in how things felt. And now I know how much work stress I am under and how much it impacts that. And so it's like, well, the Strava graph doesn't show that I had to work, 14 hours on Thursday, right? Like, it doesn't show how much other people are working. It doesn't show what they've got going on in their lives, right? It doesn't show any of that stuff. And so I guess I'm like, there's some curiosity. Like, I think it's natural to kind of wonder, like, oh, that person's got like really high mileage. Like, you wonder what the lifestyle is like to facilitate it. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's not something that I have. So you just kind of have to be like, okay, like I can reflect on where I am and like, I think that it's always fair to question, like I've questioned, like, do I want to make a professional shift so that the stress goes down so I can prioritize some of these things? But um, yeah, I just know I'm like, okay, I have to give myself some grace because I can't see what other people are doing outside of Strava, and they can't see what I'm doing outside of Strava.
100%.
And so one thing that I find interesting, and it kind of ties into what you were saying there, Andrew, but I find that I compare myself a lot less to other people than I do myself. And sometimes that is more challenging for me to like even put in, like you were saying, like, oh, this might be a busier work week. I still really struggle with that, even when comparing to myself, like being like, why am I more tired this week? And then in hindsight, I'm like, oh, now I remember that it's like because this week I've been traveling or this and this and this. Um, so that's an interesting thing again, like even if we're not comparing to other people, how we compare to ourselves and our own situations week to week to week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think too, when you add in different stress stimuli, like work or even like heat training, right? Like that's an additional stress to like on top of your training or a double or cross training. Like that's still different forms of stress. And so I think just being mindful of that and kind of like zooming way out when you can is really important. But I know for some of the Black Canyon athletes, like we're doing a lot of heat training, right? And it's like that's maybe we're not building mileage as quickly as like you would expect or you would want to, but by adding in even just like 30 minutes in a hot bathtub or 20 minutes in a hot sauna, that's still an incredible like boost of stress already on your life. Or like Andrew, you were saying like 14-hour work days. That's insane. So of course, like stress is stress is stress, your body's going to respond how it's going to respond to that. But I think this is also kind of when we see athletes start to get a little bit frustrated about like feeling like they're on a plateau or not feeling like they're progressing fast enough. And I think that those plateaus hit kind of when like stimulus repeats like are unchanged. And so like your body adapts, but the progress stalls. And so like we can introduce different forms of like periodization through like tempo or VO2 max intervals and then kind of sharpen with faster workouts from there. Um, However, like a lot of times that's like you comes after the base or life interruptions and we're, you know, tracking process metrics in ways that don't necessarily matter if we're not paying attention to the stress. But some athletes too will do like, I don't know, like um run streaks or whatever. And like those are great in moderation sometimes, and it depends on the athlete, but it's also like we still have to keep stress under control, right? So it's like how do you kind of like stay in it when the results aren't where you think they should be or they're not happening fast enough. So like what do you do when I don't know, when you're like stuck at like an 80-mile week and you're like, I really thought I'd be at 100 by now. Or if you're at a 40-mile week and you're like, wow, I should be running 60 miles by now because this is what I was doing last year at this time. Like, do you guys ever have moments like that where you're like, what the heck are we doing?
Yes. Yes.
Tell me more.
Um, yeah, I feel like I should run more. Like the Strava graph that I think gets me the most is when you look at like weekly mileage and seeing it like ramp up. And I obviously, it's not as linear as I would like it to be. So there's this um, really big desire to always constantly keep increasing my weekly mileage. And then when I don't get it, it's like, oh shit, like, we're falling behind, or like, we need to create more volume, or sometimes I go a little bit longer on my runs than what's scheduled, so I can try to hit this arbitrary goal. And then I don't know, just the spiral of like, more is better instead of more is just more.
Yeah. And then for me, it's funny too, is like understanding, uh, because obviously we want to continue to like push ourselves, but then understanding like where you should or not, because one thing I'm learning about myself is, to Jacob's point, is like the concept, a lot of people put the concept of like more mileage is better. But something I've learned over the last year, and like Kristen, I think since I've started with you, um, I've kind of, I mean, since I've started with you, I've been doing more workouts and like advanced uh efforts and stuff than I was previously. And that kind of helped me reframe like, okay, maybe my body doesn't feel good over 60 miles. So maybe I shouldn't be trying to be like, oh, I need to be doing more mileage. I need to build up my body to do that. It's like, okay, maybe my body really just doesn't like that, but I can advance myself in my effort, or like doing better at workouts or progressing workouts. But I think sometimes I'm just uncertain, like, I don't know, should I be going for more mileage or what's the best method? So,
Yeah, those are really good questions. And I think it always is going to depend on like what you're training for, right? It's like we could increase, like Caitlin, specifically for you, like we probably could increase the mileage if we took out the quality, you know? So there's like a balance to it where it's like if you were like, I want to hit 60 miles a week, 70 miles a week, like cool, yeah, we're gonna take out the speed work for a while just to make sure that you can like adapt accordingly and like in a healthy way without getting burnt out or injured. Um, but it kind of depends on like outside stressors as well.
yeah, and the last thing on that point too is just like the other thing I struggle with is talking about like what we're prioritizing when I think about races. And like putting preconceived concepts, like I had attempted to do tushers because I know I'm not like great at mountain races. I want to be good at them because I've done like a few shorter ones and I love the concept. And I'm just like, okay, how much do I need to keep trying for this, or accept like maybe that's not my jam? I don't know.
Yeah. I think some, especially when like going through different race scenarios too, like focusing on like what your values are and like why we're doing it in the first place matters a lot. And it'll like keep you showing up day after day after day, especially when like you're training through the winter and it's really boring and like you get through the hard parts of the race or you get to the hard parts of the race and you're like, why am I here? What are we doing? What's the point of this? You know? Where you like bonk early in a 50K? And like all of those questions kind of just like start popping up in your mind about like what the point is and like why you're not fast yet. So I think though, like Jacob, to your point, when we're talking about like building more mileage and like feeling like there's this need to increase mileage week over week, is that because of what you're seeing on social media, or is that like an intrinsic motivator where you just like feel like you should?
Um, it's intrinsic. There, I don't have social media, so I'm not like being influenced in that way.
Mm.
Um, I think my brain works very linearly, and I think that progress should be linear. Like if you're hitting certain splits on a workout, and then like, a month later you do the same workout, you should be faster on that workout, and that's progress.
What if, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, what if you got sick in between those two workouts? Or what if your work hours increased? Or what if you got married? Do you still think you should be faster? Like with all these additional stresses in there?
I mean, the answer is yes, because that's how I feel.
Okay. I think the reality is that the answer is it depends. Like it depends on the stress, it depends on sleep quality, fueling, how you're feeling, what those outside stressors are, and like if you were able to kind of like navigate them and take care of yourself in a way that would like set you up to be faster in in cases like that, right? So it's like if you can keep increasing mileage week over week, but if you're not sleeping enough, if you're not fueling well, it will be a recipe for disaster eventually, right? Like you might
Yeah,
get sick
for
or
for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't
So
know. I think the idea like higher mileage is fun. Like I like running. I want to run, bigger routes or like cooler things.
yeah, absolutely. Um, and I think that there's like a way to do that too. Whereas like the thing about like the building and that foundation phase that we talk about a lot, like the base building or whatever, is like a lot of that is just like based on habits. And so it's like those small like 1% improvements every day that no one else sees. Like Strava doesn't track those, right? Like we don't track those all the time either. But kind of like having those daily habits and like I don't know, like using them with like compound effect, I think will make us better over time. It's just the consistency of showing up and doing the thing. Um, but and I know I've talked about like the book Atomic Habits by James Clear a lot, which is such a good book. But he kind of like really hones in on the fact that like habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And so the more consistent you can be with the running, like if you're given like 75 to 80 minutes easy run on whatever day and you do 90 to 100 minutes, like that's okay in moderation, but if you're doing that every time, you're actually selling yourself short because you're cutting down on recovery time. And if you're like off work and you don't have work stress or you think about the people doing the burrito challenge and you're like, who in the world, what kind of jobs do these people have to be running 40, 50, 60 miles a day to try to win burritos for a year? It like makes you kind of like wonder what their outside stress levels are like to be able to maintain mileage like that. And again, like there has to be a balance, but the best way to get faster is through consistency.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Like I wish adaptations happened overnight. I wish we could get fast, like as fast as possible as like Kipchoge in like 2 weeks. That would be amazing. It's just not like physiologically possible. Like yes, Kipchoge has excellent genes, but he's also been running since he was like 8 years old. Just consistent. Same with like Anton, same with like Jim Walmsley, same with like all of the greats, right? They've just been doing the same thing over and over and over and over to the point where it seems insane because it kind of is.
I would get bored if I could do that and like get that good in 2 weeks and see those adaptations that fast. I probably wouldn't do this, to be honest, because I
Yeah.
was seeing like incremental increases. And last week I talked about like how I would go back like a year ago and look at the increase from year over year and look at that comparison because that's where you really see the gains is like when you go a little further back, you're not going to see it over like even a month. You might, but it's going to be very small.
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like I'm encountering the time where I need to change my time scales because I'm getting older and I may not like I still feel like I could get back to speeds I had in my 30s, but at some point like I won't be able to anymore. And like I'm gonna have to have like a shorter, it'll be like 1 or 2 year time frames. Like I can't be looking back because there's gonna be like a even if I keep training consistently, it'll be like stopping the fall more than like than than increasing continuously.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yep.
change in mindset.
Yep. I think it is like a complete change in mindset. And I think we've talked about this, Christina, but I've kind of had to like refocus my entire thought process around running and training with pregnancy too, because it's just like completely thrown me off. Um, but it is hard to stay in it and it is hard to like reframe what your goals are when you're in different seasons of life, right? So it's kind of like being able to figure out what you want to master, how you want to master it, and then kind of like using those micro compounds. Like maybe I'll just do one uphill treadmill this week and then get in the pool like 4 other days of the week. And that has to be good enough sometimes. Um, but it obviously is still incredibly frustrating. So I get it. It's a complete mindset shift. But Caitlin, you had your hand up. Were you going to say something?
Well, so I was gonna ask the question after Logan was talking about like comparing from like last year and like comparing from like kind of taking those moments of being able to like reflect on like progress that you have made. And my question was gonna be, what is the best avenue for us to do those reflections of comparison? And again, not comparison in a bad way, but just like pausing and reflecting and like seeing progress. But then as Christina was talking, now I'm like, is that something that we even want to do? Because you're not comparing apples and apples. You're in different phases of life. So like, is that even appropriate to do ever?
Yeah, I think for me, like I'm fairly new to running. Like I've only been doing it for like 3, 4 years, so I can still see those. But yeah, I do think at some point it does shift, and you probably shouldn't do that because then, yeah, maybe you don't see those gains or you plateau. What if you plateau for like a whole year or 2 years? Then it's gonna really um hinder like your mental state for training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Christina, what do you think about that?
I think I only heard part of it because I had another call. Our new dishwasher's on the way.
Wait, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, your mic is very, very low.
Oh, it's because it's the
Your
dishwasher.
headphones.
My mic
Yes, the
is
Christina podcast.
my recording microphone. Um, Let me change it. Uh, Here we go. Okay, that's normal now, probably. Okay,
Perfect.
put that away. um, I only heard the very end of that because I took a call. Our
Oh,
our new
yeah, no, we were
dishwasher's
just
on the
talking,
way.
yeah,
What
we
are
were
something
talking
about
about like
plateauing?
plateauing, but like, is it a good thing for athletes to reflect and like constantly compare like the you versus you from like years past?
I don't know. I see that actually. I have a lot of older friends who like orienteer and run.
Mhm.
60s, 70s, 80s. I think I have friends in their 80s. Like I have one. There's one a couple people who like had to stop running for a while and they thought they were done, and then were able to like start again. And so then they just like start fresh, and they're just like everything is a new win, right? Like they enter a 10K or something, and they're like, they never thought I was gonna be able to run again, and now I'm running a 10K, and they don't care that it's 5 minutes slower than they would did 5 years before.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but for the ones who like stay active and like for I don't know, I think it's helpful to like have the framing of I'm still lucky to be doing these things, like even if you're not old, right? Like at 40, how old am I? 46. To be able to look and say like I don't know that I'm still doing these things, and that um and I can see improvements over shorter time scales. Maybe not the year over year, right? But
Mhm.
over the over like a meso training scale kind of thing, 6 months
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, I would say that like reflecting is like one of the most powerful things that you can do because it's like an evidence-based way to like track your progress and like zoom way out, where you
Hmm.
see like where you started and where you are. I think that would obviously change if you were injured or very ill and you like the scales tipped or something, or like as an aging athlete, it's kind of just like your values change, your priorities change. There's all these other things that are kind of like happening, but like the lag and result, whether it's like you're not adapting as quickly to vert as you want, or you're trying to figure out like downhill technical terrain, like that is exactly when reflection becomes kind of a lifeline for athletes because I think without it, there's like a risk of frustration or burnout or just quitting because you can't immediately like see the compounds happening underneath the surface. And so I don't know, I think that like with maybe structured reflection, you can kind of turn that lag into like almost like a proof of growth or like reinforce that growth mindset. And then just like make smarter adjustments based off of your personal situation. Um, but I think it definitely helps like identify different behavior patterns or kind of like counters the negativity bias where athletes will often like fixate on flaws post run, like, oh, I didn't do this right, or I should have hit this pace and I didn't, or running up this hill felt really hard today and that means I'm a terrible runner. When that's not, in fact, what it means. It just means like stress is high in another area of life, or you might be getting sick, or there could be something else going on. But I don't know. I think like there could be drawbacks to over reflection that could lead to rumination or like analysis paralysis if left unstructured or to our own devices. And that kind of is like what steals recovery time within packed schedules because you're just like sitting at work and you're like, gosh, I'm a piece of crap because I couldn't run my mile splits in a certain pace today, and like that's not helpful. That's not that's not beneficial to anyone. But I think that the benefits of reflection like far outweigh the risks. I don't think a lot of us like sit around and ruminate all day.
I think that's probably why there's so many old people who stick with orienteering, because you can continue to improve in the navigation aspects even as your body gets slower,
Mhm.
and you can keep improving your mental game. Your eyes start to, you start to need bigger scale and you can't read as well on the run. But and then there's such a healthy age group competition as you get older too, so you can continue to try and do. I mean, you obviously you want the like process goals, but you can still have these like performance things against other people your age. And that's motivating to me when there's like hefty competition in my own age group, like in Europe there's hefty competition in these 5 year age groups, and that's like really fun to not worried about the fact that none of us are competing with the the elite anymore, but we can still go and like do what our best is now and compare.
Yeah. I also think like one thing that we're seeing a lot of that is really interesting to me in trail running specifically is like the different like how do I want to say it? It's like there's like different like specialties within trail running. Like you can specialize in the 100 mile or you can specialize in the marathon or you can do both depending on the time of the year. And so like Logan for example, is like we have this really cool line up this really cool goal to like do every race distance up to 200 in a calendar year. And I think that's super cool because he's not going to get bored. You know, like there's going to be different ways to train for these different distances. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in trail running with the influx of the 200s, but then also like people are really focusing on Olympic trial qualifying times in the marathon and then like how fast can we get your 5K? And those translate from like one distance to the other, which we've seen through athletes like Rachel Entrekin or Tara Dower or David Roach, you know, and like all of these people are like excellent athletes in different distances. Like they can show up and throw down. Like if Tara showed up at a local 5K, I'd be terrified because she's fast as heck, but she can also run like 200 miles at a time pretty freaking fast. So it's just like cool how um, maybe instead of focusing on like pace or like plateauing, you can shake that up with like a different form of periodized training. Like you just train for something shorter and faster, or you build out the endurance and you train for something a little bit slower but longer, you know?
Yeah, one thing I'll and in respects to aging, because I'm 33, so um I
You're
but what
young puppy.
I know exactly. That's why I'm gonna admit that I'm
Baby.
not quite in the aging concept discussion right now. But one thing I've always really valued is I have a lot of older friends, so I don't know. I'm more of an old soul. Like my girlfriends are all like 50 and just turned 60. So I hang out with them a lot. And like for example, something that I've seen really cool is that like they're saying how running breaks down their body a little bit more. So now they're doing more cross country skiing or backcountry skiing or biking. Like my one friend Allie is an amazing like she'll cyclist and stuff like that. And we used to run together, but she's like, nope, it's really bothering my knees and my back, so now I'm cycling. So I think having people, and I mean that still applies to when you have your peers too. I have one of my good friends, Kristen, to your point, like she was getting burnt out on trails, so she was like, I want to get really fast in a marathon. So I think diversifying your friend group can really help with this comparison stuff too, because they're like reminders that like there's more than just like doing 100 milers. There's more than just doing this. And I think when I moved to the West Coast originally, I fell into that trap of like living in Auburn and like everyone's like, you must do Western States. And it's like, that was the only thing in trail running is like doing 100 milers. So now I have a more diverse, even just running activity, outdoorsy friend group. And that helps a lot because it's like, okay, I might not be running 100 milers with this group, but I can be fast with these people, or I can be chill and just like go snowshoeing with these people. And so I think that helps a lot too.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that about Auburn and the Western States because that was my experience moving back to Boston. And after having been in like running clubs in Tucson, people do everything. Like there's some people who only do roads or only do trails, but like most people will do everything. And then I joined a club in Boston and it was just the marathon. It was just the Boston Marathon. And like road runners did not go on trails. And so like it was like I had to have different groups of people, like had to have different people. But yeah, great to have like the people you can do just like goofy things with. Just go do fun things in the mountains.
Mhm. hmm That would be wild living in both places because I can totally see how there would be the draw to do Western States if you live in Auburn or Boston Marathon if you grew up in Boston or live in Boston. Um, that's really interesting though. But like in Tucson, it's interesting because the summers here are like winter everywhere else. It's
Right.
so hot, you don't want to go outside. And that's when I flipped. I was like, I'm just gonna get really efficient and really fast and really strong and focus on the marathon. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the winters, normally I would just like extend my long runs, do Black Canyon, do like those bigger ultras just because it's not as freaking hot. But having the ability to switch from one to the other, I think keeps it interesting enough that like it's harder to track your progress because you're doing so many different things, which keeps it interesting. I don't know. But I don't know. I think like the TLDR though is that like the training doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be flawless. Um, but all like staying curious about it and trying to find the, like a form of mastery somehow will always trump like that big PR, because it's like some days you can track your progress based off of how you feel or um kind of like have different takeaways or different goals, different process goals for each race. Um so I don't know. I think that with the marshmallow test exercise, like it's just really interesting to think about like the delayed gratification and how you can get more later if you just like trust in the process. But obviously there are different forms of that experiment that kind of like, there's a lot of it depends on what you're training for, what you're doing, or what you want the outcome to be. But I don't know. Consistency is always going to trump like an overnight adaptation.
So here's a question for you then. When you prescribe workouts, are you looking at splits and seeing like, okay, how are they performing? Or is it more of like, did you try and do the workout correctly? And what exactly is it like? And then like, in 2 weeks when you put more in my log, is it like this workout gave me this information, so then I correlate it to this workout this week? Or is that like,
It's both.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So sometimes like some of the workouts can get really complicated, especially like Logan's doing a lot of downhill workouts for Black Canyon specifically. And so for for him, it's like, okay, well, part of his warm up is going to be going uphill because he's going to be doing a lot of downhill reps. And so when we look at the downhill reps, we can like figure out, okay, well, what's his like pace gap and how fast could he technically run a mile flat? But you also have to keep in mind that he lives at 7,000 feet, right? So it's like, but what could he do at sea level when he like drops down to Phoenix? Like, how is that gonna play in, and how is the heat and the exposure gonna play in, and like the rocky terrain, whatever. Um, so when I built out the Black Canyon build, I kind of scaffolded those to like get harder over time with enough time to peak and then enough time to taper. And so Jacob, with you, it's really interesting because you just moved up a lot higher than you were before. And so my initial thought was that your paces would slow down until you adapted. And then you adapted really quickly. Your paces got even faster. And so your workouts that I've been giving you have been harder than I think I normally would give an athlete who like wasn't adapting as quickly. So I do go in and I look at your paces and I see the difference week over week, but that and yes, that definitely determines what workouts you get next, because it's like if you can handle this workout under this amount of stress, whether you're like fighting off an illness or your wife is sick and you're stressed out with work or whatever's happening here, like to me that sort of means that you can handle a little bit more in certain situations, and it depends, right? Like I'm not going to give you a workout I don't think that you can finish and just like demoralize you. That would be awful. Um, but the workouts that you get are based off of like the trajectory of your fitness. Did I answer that? Is that
No, that's exactly what I was looking at.
Yeah, because some of
I
the
think,
workouts do get really complicated where it's like we're doing downhill repeats and then you're doing uphill repeats, and some are like you're going to go up and then straight back down. Or you're going to do an uphill tempo and then you're going to do downhill repeats. Or you're going to do if you're running on a track versus a bike path versus a trail versus up a mountain, like that's going to change the dynamics of the workout completely. And so like with Logan, Chris, and Brett, they're all training for Black Canyon 50K. So I'm giving them a lot of the same workouts, but they're doing them in different parts of town, different trails, different terrain. And it is wild to see the adaptations because, like, Logan might choose a hill that's like at a 10% grade, whereas Chris chooses a hill that it's a 6% grade. And of course, their paces are going to be different, but they're adapting differently based off of where they choose to do the workout. So that matters a lot too.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And the fact that you have a sauna now too, like that adds another element of stress because it's like you're not just chilling after a run, you're going straight into the sauna and like sweating your face off. And that's more stress on the body. So you need more time. Okay, bye, Christina. So you need more time to adapt. Or not adapt, but more time to recover.
Yeah, I cut those out last week just because it was like,
You were
I don't
sick.
know. Yeah, I felt like I
Yeah,
was getting
smart.
sick and I was like, man, I should probably just like not add more.
Yeah, 100%. We did that with Logan last week too. He was sick and I was like, don't do heat training this week. Like it's just gonna make it worse. So yeah, I think you made the right call.
Yeah. I think that like to your point of like the adaptations after Ring the Spring seems so drastic that I was like, oh, so I should be doing this all the time. Like this is how it should be every block. And I
Mhm.
think that's what like gets in my head of like, okay, maybe that's not true. Like, Philly was so fast and so like such a big boost. And then it was like I'm hitting these paces and I was just thinking like, okay, so like at the end of this block I should be this percent better than I was the block before, kind of
Yeah.
like, the linear line thing. I really like the graph. And I think it should look that way in my head all the time.
Yeah, I think we all have a tendency to do that where we're like, oh, well, I should constantly be getting better because I'm like really consistent or I'm working harder or I'm adding in strength training and like that means like if X then Y. But it definitely like our bodies take time to adjust and we have to find the right balance, which is honestly like finding the right balance is like the secret sauce, but it is so nuanced and individual for every athlete that like Logan's strength training is going to look different than your strength training that's going to look different than my strength training, especially when paired with the run training that goes into that, especially because we're not all doing the same races, right? So it's like figuring out what that trajectory looks like. And usually it's like you're plateaued for a while and then you have a breakthrough and then you get a little bit better. It's just you have to like wait for that breakthrough, which is the hardest part sometimes.
One thing last year that destroyed my confidence was that high alpine season and that training block for high-low. It was like, I am so slow. I'm running all my runs at like an average of 10,000 feet and doing like 7 to 10,000 feet of vert. But like in my head, I'm like, I'm so slow. I'm not fit, like all of that. And it's just like that seasonality because right now I'm running really fast, but I'm also staying down at 7,000 feet. I'm doing downhill repeats. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm, you know, not putting in like 20,000 feet of vert every week. So that was one that I had to like, looking back now, I see that, but when I was in it, oh, my confidence was like on the floor in that high-low build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. But I think that that's like a normal thing that happens because you go in with the expectation like you had moved from the Front Range to Salida. Like that's a huge jump in altitude. So it's like you're redlining all of your runs and you have to reestablish what easy running feels like at altitude. And Jacob, I think that's kind of where you are too, since you guys have moved up a little higher. Um, but you're adapting really well. Like your paces are really fast right now too. So I think it's just a matter of time before you do have that like breakthrough workout where you're like, oh, okay, like now it's clicking. And I think once that happens, then you'll start to like notice like the smaller like 1% gains instead of being like, I should be this fast by now. You're gonna be like, wow, okay, I did this a little bit better this week, whether it was fueling or sleeping or a certain pace on a workout or something. Like you'll start to notice like the small pieces and those will stack up over time.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it took a little while for like sleep to kind of regulate moving up to like a higher elevation.
Yep. Yep. When I moved from Boulder or from Portland to Boulder, it took me like a year to adapt. I was really like wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air because I just couldn't breathe. Um, and I don't know, just watching like both of you guys move from like lower elevations to higher elevations and just handle it, like I'm like, God, I'm such a wimp because like it happens to me too, where like I'm comparing myself to you guys or I'm comparing my experience to your experiences. And so it's I think we all kind of do that to ourselves, but knowing that like you guys think that way makes me feel better about me thinking that way. It's all like it's all relative in a lot of ways. So,
For sure.
yeah. But consistency over time, that's what gets you kind of where you want to go. It's like the point of it all. But yeah, happy to chat through any of this anytime though. It's fascinating stuff. But I also want to be mindful of time if you guys are at work.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
to go back to work.
Yeah, Logan's like, yeah, cool, we're done.
Yeah.
Gotta go. Um,
Like,
but yeah, thank you for joining. I'm glad that I actually recorded it. So
Don't lose the recording.
yeah. Fingers crossed. I can't be trusted when it comes to Zoom, but I'm gonna try to put this in the newsletter this week. So
Technology, man. It's
mhm.
hard.
It's so hard. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for joining. It was good to see you.
yeah, good to see you.
Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
Farewell.
All right. See ya.
Bye.